one of the greatest strikers in the UFC ever. One of the GOATs, as they say, greatest of all time, Anderson Silva, recently gave a seminar, and I saw a tape of it, and it was brilliant. And this guy totally epitomizes Wing Chun and Jeet Kune, which he openly uses. But the way he uses it so effectively and brilliantly is he doesn't get stuck right there in front of his opponents. He knows that you have to be evasive. But with that evasiveness, the spider, Anderson Silva, knocked out Rich Franklin and all these great UFC fighters, just knocked out like a dozen of them straight. How? With this. They call it in traditional martial arts a gun punch. Not like everyone else punches. The exact opposite of what I just demonstrated with a shoulder coming up and power. No. He did it with a lot less power and pinpoint accuracy, nailing these sensitive nerve points with beautiful techniques and precision and simple angulation and safety leads and distancing, which he's teaching now, principles such as when you can touch the opponent, they can touch you. And that's what he literally trained, this kind of tripwire type of neurology and training, so that he would hardwire these brilliant techniques. And like I said, look at his knockouts. It looks magical. These guys are swinging like crazy, and like Manny Pacquiao, he is the one fighter out of 100 who doesn't have to use this shoulder force. No. It's just this very invisible, imperceptible, probably has half the power, maybe 75% of the power. He doesn't need that much power. He has accuracy, which is why he was one of the greats of all time. So it comes from this root of Wing Chun and Jeet Kune, which is super technical, which is why Anderson Silva is so great. What made Grandmaster Bruce Lee so great, that they examined everything from quadrants, from an analytic viewpoint of mechanics and science as to what would work and why it would work, as opposed to just brute force and rote memorization and going through techniques over and over again. So if we examine this kind of this weapon that Anderson Silva and Bruce Lee used, Ping Choi and Chun Choi, these really fast, light, but strong punches which use the whole body, we can see that this is one of the key differences. Western boxing, not only is that shoulder pushing off the foot, this whole power, these punches, shoulders raised very nicely to protect the nerve points. Completely different. You're totally exposed with this traditional Kung Fu, Wing Chun punch. But like I said, it's far less telegraphed. It gets there a lot faster than, almost twice as fast. So Grandmaster Bruce Lee, Anderson Silva, Manny Pacquiao, they knew it was a game of letting their opponents swing at them and miss, which they could do easily because they could see these over-telegraphed, overloaded up shots coming in, and they would just keep their elbows down like they're climbing a snowy mountain and these were spikes. Keep their elbows spiked down and wait for their opportunity where they can throw this vertical punch, which seems like it's nothing, seems like it has no power. Pacquiao's opponents who got knocked out would even say this. He has little dinosaur arms, little pitter-pat punches. Some guys who fought Floyd Mayweather Jr. would say the same thing about his training. He's just moving his hands real fast. Yeah, they saw in the ring what the reality was, which is why there's that old adage in boxing, speed kills, which is true. Because if you're faster than your opponent, you can see him coming and he's moving in slow motion, even 10% compared to your offense and your defense. You've got their number, you've got them timed. So we can come out of this traditional Jeet Kune shell, similar to the Philly shell, but even more scientifically broken down, in that we have this strong, braced guard right here. We're literally gonna train this to block shots. And of course, like I always say, this is the Jeet Kune shell, this is the Philly shell, But we don't stay in this position. This is a defensive shell in which we block incoming shots with this shoulder area here. We replace our chin with that shoulder area and come over the top, or maybe even bump with the shoulder and at the same time throw a hook. I was never good enough to do that, but I saw coaches of mine and other fighters could do that, which is some next level stuff, which is where you're not kind of just bumping and blocking with the shoulder. You're blocking with the shoulder and snapping with the same arm instead of, I'll have to try to demonstrate. I was never good at that, but anyways, the idea in Jeet Kune is to defend all of these four gates, these sectors of the body, which are broken off into different sows and hands, which are going to defend them. And as the opponent comes with a really wide shot, we're gonna cut in on the center line. We're gonna avoid that shot and beat them to the punch with this vertical punch. So this is one of the key differences between Western and Chinese boxing. The horizontal punch, which has tons of force and tons of power, obviously, but huge limitations in that you really can only throw it from this position. And this Jeet Kune vertical jab, which can come from here, it can come from here, it can come from there, it can come from down here, it can come from up here, it can come from over the top, it can come from the side. I mean, there's so many angles this up jab can come at, this back fist, which is, totally illegal in boxing, obviously, but it's still, boxers and fighters use it all the time. It's one of the three angles of the up jab. The hook, the non-telegraphic, as we call the gun punch, and that refers to, like, in Westerners, you're a gun, you're drawing a gun. It's just very difficult when you come to shake somebody's hand to see that motion. It's so much harder to see this motion than it is to see this motion. This motion, you can really tell somebody's throwing a rock at you, they're throwing a punch at you, they're angry. You can tell, you can see this transference of force, you can see it in their face. But the gun punch, the traditional martial arts punch, bam. From traditional Japanese martial arts and traditional Chinese martial arts as well, right from the waist. No telegraph, no load up, not from this perfect boxing or fighting stance, right from here. That quick, light, elbow down punch adapted so that he can sneak in as the opponent is throwing these big power shots, and you're seeing them, making them miss, and finding that nerve point, that mental foreman, as they call the chin. It's not really the chin. The chin's right here. This is the knockout point here, the mental nerve. Or, of course, the temple, or any other one of these lethal points, which I don't really like to go into detail about too much because I don't want it to get into the wrong hands. But that having been said, before Jeff Chan, before Jesse Enkamp, before all these amazing martial artists, and there's 10 others on YouTube who are just like raising the game for striking and pressure testing everything, these guys wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Grandmaster Bruce Lee. That's because he's the one who not only invented the MMA gloves, but invented the thinking and the ideology behind them, that we're going to pressure test things, we're going to forget formality, we're going to forget tradition, we're going to scientifically break down everything and see what works. And he wrote 13 books. He was a brilliant philosopher. Only the last one was really about martial arts. This guy was a thinker and a writer. You guys got to read his work. It's brilliant. And, he said in his last book, Tao of Jeet Kune, when his back was broken, he had a chance to, not be the incredible super athlete he was. And he said, don't get lost in the names. If you're hung up on the names and what this stuff is called and this style, and that, he said, forget it. Just use what is effective. That's why you find guys like Anderson Silva, Tony Ferguson. It's not the crux of how they trained in the UFC, but it was part of what informed them, and the tradition and the thinking and what helped them stylistically is this Wing Chun and Jeet Kune. So that's the idea. Next video, we are going to cover Lin Seal Dai Da, which is this whole simultaneous attack and defense principle, which is really key to Junfen Chinese boxing and Wing Chun. And yeah, much respect to Grandmaster Bruce Lee, who literally gave his life so that we could have this